And global climate talks in Brazil are teetering on the brink of collapse. At the UN's COP30 summit in Belém, negotiators remain deeply divided, especially over one of the most fundamental issues, fossil fuels. After nearly 2 weeks of intense negotiations in the Amazonian city of Belém, the final day of COP30 risked ending without a major deal. A draft agreement released by host country Brazil omitted any mention of fossil fuels or even a roadmap to phase them out. Now, the absence of explicit fossil fuel language has sparked outrage. European Union Climate Commissioner Wopke Hoekstra called the draft unacceptable, warning that talks could end in no deal. Hoekstra said while the EU is prepared to stretch on climate finance, they will only do so if the agreement strengthens its commitment to emission cuts. More than 30 countries, including wealthy nations, emerging economies, and vulnerable island states, had written to Brazil ahead of the final day, saying that they would reject a deal that does not include a roadmap away from oil, coal, and gas. Now, not everyone sees this exclusion as exclusion or betrayal. Developing countries notably defend the weaker language, arguing that they need a just transition, one that safeguards energy security and protects workers dependent on fossil fuel industries. The president of COP30, Brazilian diplomat André Correa de Lago, warned that failure to reach a deal would be a blow to multilateralism. He urged nations to find common ground even as time ran out. Money is another major fault line. The draft text calls for a many-fold increase in adaptation finance for developing nations and urging a tripling of adaptation funding by 2030 compared to 2025. But critics say the sources and mechanisms for the money remain vague, and rich countries are not committing enough. In a twist, the draft introduces trade measures into climate agreement. First for COP summits, developing countries pushed for this inclusion, fearing that carbon border taxes could hurt their export economies. Now, as the clock ticked past the scheduled closing time, negotiators were still scrambling. Some countries reportedly began sending delegations back to their hotels, raising the possibility that the summit could spill over into the weekend. But still, the challenge does remain stark to deliver a meaningful agreement that accelerates emission cuts, supports vulnerable nations, and builds trust. And all while geopolitical divides run deep. If COP30 fails to produce a robust outcome, critics warn it could signal a crisis of faith in international climate cooperation.